The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Let's start today with the growing chaos amidst the Trump White House staff. We've followed individually a lot of these firings and resignations, and a number of them actually happened during our vacation that I haven't even gotten a chance to talk with you about. So to catch you up, we saw, in no particular order, the forced resignation of disgraced National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. We saw the firing of Director of White House Communications Anthony Scaramucci just a few days after officially starting his role there. No replacement. The interim replacement is Hope Hicks, although there's no official, actual long-term Director of White House Communications right now. Former Chief of Staff Reince Priebus is out. Reince Priebus, I'm sorry. Replaced by John Kelly as Chief of Staff. No plans right now to fill the role of Chief Strategist, left open by the disappearance of Breitbart propagandist Stephen Bannon during our vacation. Sean Spicer, White House press secretary, he left, replaced by Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Former Chief of Staff Reince Priebus's deputy, named Katie Walsh, left the administration months ago, made less of a splash. Boris Epstein, another advisor, fired back in March. And then at lower levels, there's a lot of other staffers who have been let go. Communication aide Michael Short, communication aide Andrew Hemming, they're also not being immediately replaced. And there's way more that we haven't even heard of. And in addition to that, there's many positions that have just never been filled to begin with. And then we saw this sort of capped off near the end of our vacation with the removal of Sebastian Gorka, who's a Steve Bannon ally who was deputy assistant to the president, has horrific white nationalist, white supremacist ties, which we've talked about. And there's a few different layers to this. Number one, recruiting's probably kind of difficult right now in the Trump White House. You've got multiple investigations. Who would want to join this administration right now, particularly when it's not even really clear how long it's going to last? And then you've got the new Chief of Staff, John Kelly. Every indication is that he's a big factor in what's been going on here. And there's actually an interesting article from earlier today in Politico, which says, quote, interviews with 6 White House staffers and people close to the president attribute Trump's shrinking West Wing to 3 factors. Chief of Staff John Kelly's careful review process, which has led to the paring down of an organization that many inside have complained was top-heavy. The chilling factor of 5 open-ended Russia investigations hanging over the White House, making it hard to attract new talent. And the president's own dark mood this summer, which has left him increasingly isolated and in the mood to hunker down and not hire up. This strategy that we're learning about from the new Chief of Staff, John Kelly, I guess he's considering a system where the only people directly reporting to the president would be the Chief of Staff himself, John Kelly, the staff secretary, and the White House counsel. No one else would directly report to the president. And this does a few things. Number one, it sort of eliminates the space for someone in a Steve Bannon strategy position to directly influence the president's thinking. If you're John Kelly and you're even remotely sensible, you're going to try to put distance between Trump and the people that get him to do really crazy stuff. So that makes sense. But also the isolation of Trump. Trump seems to, from an emotional standpoint, from everything we know, really not be doing well and watching TV for hours on end in the Oval Office, and reducing the number of people that report directly to the president. It could be part of a strategy from Kelly to prevent Trump from doing crazy stuff, but it could also make Trump go into an even darker place.
And that might have been a big reason as to why Anthony Scaramucci was ousted.
Absolutely.
Because he wanted to report directly to the president as the communications director and circumvents the chief of staff. And what also is interesting is that there used to be these 3 segments of the Trump cabinet. There was the establishment segment represented by Reince Priebus. There was the white nationalist segment represented by Steve Bannon. And then there was the military generals like John Kelly and Jim Mattis. And it seems like the latter has won out, that it's going to be, the rule of the military in this cabinet. You can expect him to become a lot more hawkish. And I think that's why we see him stepping up his game when it comes to Afghanistan in particular.
And that's been a concern. I mean, very early on when we first got the list, remember, Pat, of who it was that Trump was considering for secretary positions and advisory positions, one of the first things I said was, it seems very military heavy. And I outlined a variety of reasons why that is something that we should be concerned about. There's almost no establishment wing left in the Trump administration. You could kind of say Jeff Sessions is the most prominent link to establishment Republicans that is left right now. And it's been pretty damn dicey for Jeff Sessions over time. One other thought on this. If you are a small government conservative, you want fewer government employees. You want government to be as small as possible. So maybe you see what is total disarray in the Trump White House and you say, hey, this is good because I want small government. But I want to make another point. If you don't want Trump accomplishing things, maybe you also want less staff, because the less the smaller Trump staff is, maybe the more difficult it is for him to actually get things done. And we don't want Trump doing things because everything he wants to do is a disaster.
Even from the beginning, he had a tough time filling the vacancies in the West Wing, right? And getting a confirmation from the Senate. And now that problem is exacerbated in part because I think a lot of people have these distinguished careers in their respective fields, and they don't want to leave such lucrative positions only to be fired within like a week or a month.
Or to have your reputation absolutely destroyed the way it happened to Sean Spicer, press secretary. Yeah, I think that that's absolutely valid. And we'll continue to see how far this goes and how pared down the Trump staff becomes. Okay, we know Donald Trump is obsessed with his crowds. The downfall of former press secretary Sean Spicer really started hours into Trump's presidency when Trump forced Spicer to parade out there and just tell straight up lies about the size of Donald Trump's inauguration crowd. Yesterday, Donald Trump went to Texas, to the Hurricane Harvey ravaged Texas, and he did not talk about the now 15 casualties as a result of Hurricane Harvey, but he did take it as an opportunity to talk about the crowd size. Trump did a briefing with the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, and then afterwards he spoke to a crowd. It was like 100 or so people who were just they knew Trump was doing this briefing and they wanted to see him, I guess, even though a lot of them were protesters holding signs. And it's unclear if these people showed up spontaneously or if at least the ones that were pro-Trump were organized the way you might organize a political rally. We don't really know, but the point is, this is a hurricane relief event. Trump is supposedly going to bring comfort to people, to assure the victims that things are going to be dealt with properly. And he praises the size of the crowd. Take a look at this.
Thank you, everybody. I just want to say we love you. You are special. We're here to take care. It's going well. And I want to thank you for coming out. We're going to get you back and operating immediately. Thank you, everybody. What a crowd. What a turnout. This has been a total cooperative effort. Again, we will see you soon. I will tell you, this is historic. It's epic what happened. But you know what? It happened in Texas, and Texas can handle anything. Thank you all, folks. Thank you. Thank you.
It's like he's at a Super Bowl victory rally congratulating the winning team. Crowd size again. Total, unabashed, unashamed narcissism. But Obama did the same thing, right? After Deepwater Horizon, Obama showed up and praised the 50 people that were there. Oh, wait, no, he didn't. Oh, but okay, Obama played golf during Hurricane Katrina. Oh, wait, Obama wasn't president during Hurricane Katrina. Doesn't matter. Polling still shows that a lot of Republicans blame Obama for the bogus response to Hurricane Katrina. I'm almost at a loss for words here.
I think it's because Trump has these go-to applause lines when he really doesn't know what to say. So on the campaign trail, it was all about how we were going to build a wall and Mexico was going to pay for it.
And crooked Hillary.
We can't really use that anymore. So now he's talking about crowd sizes. You just expect it not to be said in such a setting like this.
Now, if Trump praised the crowd size, and maybe showed some empathy towards the victims of Hurricane Harvey, many of whom have been displaced, some of whom have died, that would be slightly less disgusting. But Trump didn't mention that 15 people died. He just didn't say a word about it. Tens of thousands of people displaced, nothing, endless millions of dollars in damage, nothing, people without homes, and just not a word. But there's a couple hundred people there, maybe 100, some of whom, again, were protesters against Trump. And Trump praises the crowd. And obviously also you see him wearing his USA branded hats, and someone else with him was wearing one of the Make America Great Again, I believe. But that's just par for the course. And as another example of what was said, and just the guy is completely out of touch in a depraved way. He said to Texas Governor Greg Abbott during the briefing that they held, quote, "We won't say congratulations. We don't want to do that. We'll congratulate each other when it's all finished, but you have been terrific." Congratulations. This is a disaster. Our infrastructure for dealing with these events is a total train wreck. Trump has done nothing to improve that, even though he campaigned on improving infrastructure. And his entire demeanor, it's like this was a sporting event, not a devastating and deadly crisis. Check out one tweet from Donald Trump that he put out about this. Historic rainfall in Houston and all over Texas. Floods are unprecedented and more rain coming. Spirit of the people is incredible. Thanks. It's almost like saying historic victory by the New England Patriots. Scoring was unprecedented and points keep showing up on the scoreboard. Spirit of the team is incredible. It's like the guy is emotionally just not there, whether it's his inability to empathize with an individual homeless person next to Trump Tower, where he's been working for who knows how long, or endless numbers of people in Houston, in the Houston, Texas area that have been ravaged by the storm. He can't relate. He just can't relate.
It seems like the positives when it comes to the White House's response to this hurricane has been that it does seem like adequate funds have been attributed to the storm and response.
Sure.
And also that he chose to go to Corpus Christi, where the storm has passed, and not to the epicenter of the storm, which is Houston.
Sure.
Because they're still dealing with it. And if the president goes there, this is sole security detail, and you're taking away funds where they could be better used to help the people there.
Silver lining.
Also, words do matter, and it's just such an easy softball to talk about the victims and the loss and the tragedy of what happened.
How do you not include that somewhere in the speech when you talk about the crowd size? And this crowd size thing, it's just an obsession for Trump. Last week, there was kind of a small crowd at a rally that Trump did in Phoenix, and Trump was reportedly furious with a staffer of his named George Gigikos, or Gigikos, I'm not exactly sure how it's pronounced, who's Trump's advance man at these rallies. And Trump was reportedly so angry with George that he kicked him off of working on those rallies. Trump, I guess, was watching TV a couple hours in advance of the rally. And understandably, there weren't that many people at the venue hours in advance of Trump showing up. And he became irate and completely lost his marbles. This is what the president is most concerned by, and it's absolutely disgusting. I'm on Twitter at @DPacman if you have thoughts on this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new member of the day is Amanda Guzman. Amanda, thank you so much for being a David Pakman Show member. This is your program in that it could not exist without your support. The easiest ways to support us are, number one, through membership at davidpakman.com/membership, talking about pennies a day, and patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can support us for as little as $1 a month, talking about a fraction of a penny per day. No, that's not true. 3 cents a day. Sorry,
sure.
My math, I carried the zero in a way that was not appropriate there, Pat. I apologize. And also, if you ever shop on Amazon, you can go to davidpakman.com/Amazon, and then anything you buy on Amazon will send us a little kickback. Everybody wins. That's the great thing. It's been a long time since we did Hatriot Mail because of David Pakman Show Summer Vacation, but it is time for Hatriot Mail. If you've forgotten what Hatriot Mail is, because it's been so long since we last did it, I'll remind you.
It's like email forwards from your racist grandma on steroids. Hatriot Mail. Written by patriots who hate David Pakman. Because America. And because freedom.
Okay, in this week's Unhinged Hatriot Mail, lots of references that I just don't understand. I don't know if this Hatriot is making up some of this stuff, or if I'm just so out of touch with the kids these days that I don't recognize some of these references. But let's take a listen together and see if we can figure it out.
David Pakman is a regressive, hole-sniffing $3 bill libturd. Number 1. It's not illegal having business ties in Russia. Stick with your Islamic apologies. You're becoming professionals regarding this matter. 2. Number. Hillary, Bathhouse Barry, and Bernard DeCuck lie when their lips are moving. 3. Number. Trump's far from prefect, but he's way better than any regressive loser who resides in the demon-ratic party. 4. Number. Modern liberals suffer from severe mental illness, i.e. homosexuality, translunacy, jihadi apologists, race, poverty pimping, etc. Number 5. Trump is here to stay. So, go f*** yourselves. MAGA.
I genuinely don't know what, like, is Bathhouse, I know that people refer to Barack Obama as Barry Soetoro. Is Bathhouse Barry a reference to Obama supposedly being gay? I don't even know what Bathhouse Barry, like, what is that? I don't know what that is. $3 bill.
Oh, that one I understand.
$3 bill, you
Because
understand?
there's a saying that, you know, someone is as phony as a $3 bill.
Oh,
so he's
okay.
doing this clever thing where he's trying to call you phony.
Got it. Yeah, just very, very strange.
Also, I like the number signs put after the number. That's a new one for
and
me.
I like how
Trump is far from prefect.
Trump is not prefect at all. There's no doubt about that. And he's not prevalent either. I actually don't know if this is either an indication that I'm the one who doesn't understand what these incisive and very precise and biting critiques are, or if the Hatriot is just completely unhinged. And history pushes me towards the latter, but I'm always open to the idea that I just have no idea what's going on.
I think this one is going to stick with us for a long time.
Hatriot 40, you can turn Hatriot Mail into something positive. You can get a 40% discount off of your membership by using the coupon code Hatriot40 at davidpakman.com/membership. We've been following the approval rating of Donald Trump for some time. It's relevant for a number of reasons, which I've told you about and will tell you about again. And we've seen Trump's approval rating sporadically in the low 30s in a variety of different polls, but not in the Gallup daily presidential approval tracking poll. That's sort of the gold standard for comparison for presidential approval. Gallup's daily tracking poll has been around for decades, and Trump's previous low in that poll was 35%. And as you'll see here, if you're watching with us on this graph that we put up on the screen, on 3 different days during August 13th, 23rd, and 24th, Donald Trump's approval rating hit yet another presidency low of 34%. Now, as of this morning, it was back to 35%. But what I want to call your attention to in this graph is that if we analyze this graph like we might analyze a stock price of a company that's publicly traded, we'd see that despite the fact that the low hasn't dropped that much, the presidency low had been 36% for a while, and then we saw 35%, and then now we saw 34%. You can look at the trend line and see that the general trend is going lower and lower. Trump's high points are lower and lower, and we're picking up lower and lower low points as well. Now, there's some other internals from Trump's approval that I want to briefly mention. 16% of Americans like Donald Trump's conduct as president of the United States. That's according to a Pew Research poll. That's a separate question from approval. You can dislike Trump's conduct, but still approve of the job that he's doing. Requires a little bit of cognitive dissonance, but there's plenty of that to go around among Trump supporters. And also from the Gallup Daily Tracking Poll internals, with young people, meaning 18 to 29-year-olds, 20% approval, 20% approval. 80% of individuals aged 18 to 29 either disapprove of the job Trump is doing or aren't sure. This is indicative of trouble for 2020 because you are going to have more voters who will have turned 18 between last election day and the next one, and they presumably are not going to be friendly to Donald Trump. However, I want to be very upfront and clear about something with you. Despite Donald Trump's unpopularity, even at 34 or 35%, he could still win re-election in 2020. And the math is actually it's almost so simple that many people are missing it. There's an article in The Week from Damon Linker, and it points out pretty astutely, pretty obviously as well, that just because you don't approve of Donald Trump doesn't mean that, number one, you'll vote at all. Number one, you might just not vote. Even though you disapprove of the job Trump is doing, you might not vote because you don't think your vote makes a difference, or just you don't really vote. And number two, it doesn't mean that you would necessarily vote for someone else. You could be a Republican who disapproves of the job that Donald Trump is doing, but you're not going to vote for whoever the next Hillary Clinton is, or Bernie Sanders, or whoever it is that ultimately runs in 2020. And this comes down to election polls versus approval polls. For election prediction polls, and we've talked about this, you need a likely voter model, because if you're trying to predict an election, we don't have mandatory voting in the US. You need to assess who is going to vote, and only among those people, who are they likely to vote for. Approval polls are just, do you approve of the job Trump is doing as president, regardless of whether you did vote or plan to vote. And that's where we get to the simple math of it. Trump won the 2016 election with 46.4% of the popular vote. He lost the popular vote, eked out small wins in 3 key states, and ultimately defeated Hillary Clinton in the Electoral College. Voter turnout was about 50%. This means that Trump only needed roughly 25% of the vote of all eligible American voters because turnout was so low. This means that if 34% of the country approves of Donald Trump, you can still win because Trump won with only 25% of the eligible vote.
It seems like if he's done it once, he can do it again.
Absolutely.
And Michael Moore, who's one of the few progressive voices who predicted that Donald Trump was going to win the 2016 election, now predicts that he's going to win re-election. Maybe he'll lose by even more in the popular vote, but he still could hold on to those states of like Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin because his message is resonating there. And that's why we have to either try to push for eliminating the Electoral College or just pushing for something easier, which is a national interstate popular vote compact.
We've talked about that. That would be where if enough states whose total electoral vote count comprises 270, they can pledge to put their electoral votes towards the winner of the popular vote nationally. And that is de facto eliminating the electoral vote. But we will dig into that more on a future program. Yesterday, I told you about Ted Cruz and his 2012 Hurricane Sandy hypocrisy. He did not want to support a bill in 2012 for Hurricane Sandy relief. He does now want federal funding, federal relief funds for Hurricane Harvey relief. And as is often the case, the truth is not only slightly different than what ideologically committed Republicans often say, it very often is the total opposite. And David Sirota, who's a friend of the show, a former guest on the program, he wrote a really good piece in the International Business Times. And he pointed out that Republicans have historically taken advantage of hurricanes to justify doing more fossil fuel drilling and harvesting. And you'll often hear the right, whenever there's a natural disaster, they'll say, you know, this isn't the time to talk about climate change. This isn't the time to talk about the effect of humans on our climate. Even though it's actually perfectly reasonable to be talking about climate change all the time, including after natural disasters. But recall what Republicans did after Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Katrina crippled oil and gas infrastructure. And Republicans, after Hurricane Katrina, took that as an opportunity to argue, hey, we need more oil and gas drilling all over the country so that in the future, we would be less impacted by oil and gas infrastructure that gets damaged by hurricanes. What we should be saying is, well, let's get off of fossil fuels altogether and shift to renewables so we don't have to worry at all about hurricanes impacting fossil fuel installations. But no, Republicans said we should do more oil and gas drilling. And what you have to realize is that if we have hurricanes, Republicans will say we need more oil and gas drilling. If we don't have hurricanes, Republicans will say this is a great time to do more oil and gas drilling because the installations won't be at risk of being destroyed by hurricanes. That's the key issue. No matter what is going on with climate or weather or the environment, Republicans will argue that we need more oil and gas drilling. And I will not be surprised, Pat, to hear the exact same thing in the wake of Hurricane Harvey.
And Republicans are supposed to be champions for just the best idea winning out in the free market, whatever's best for humanity, maybe even the environment, or just whatever's going to be most profitable. And yet it seems like they're favoring specific industries and ones that are non-renewable resources like oil and gas and coal.
Totally. I mean, coal is the best example. Trump wanting to single-handedly revive an industry that has fewer employees than Arby's nationally, that is falling out of favor as a result of market conditions and technological conditions and environmental conditions to some degree. And he wants to force that in, even though he claims to be for the free market. And the best possible outcome of any hurricane that is hugely destructive and has led to so much tragedy, the wake of which is going to be observed for a long time in in various parts of Texas, is that we should start putting together the big picture, right? Economic inequality in terms of people's ability to weather such a storm, in a literal sense here, climate change, science, the commons, energy. There is a lot here, but doing more drilling for oil and gas is absolutely the last thing that we should be coming away with. And we need to be prepared. Don't be shocked when you start hearing Republicans say we should strengthen our oil and gas infrastructure to make us less susceptible to interruptions in energy supply as a result of these hurricanes. That is the wrong approach. I've been talking about it for years. You probably already understand that, but get ready for the Republican doublespeak on it. Discuss this with us on our Reddit discussion forum at davidpakman.com/Reddit.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
It's great to welcome back to the program Frank Meeink. Frank is the former neo-Nazi who was misidentified, or I guess who I was misidentified as on CNN Headline News, Dr. Drew's show several years ago. That's how Frank and I got in touch, and he's been on the program a number of times. We've talked about his autobiography, Recovering Skinhead. We've talked about so many different aspects of what we're seeing now in terms of the resurgence of some of these white supremacist and white nationalist groups. Frank, it's been a crazy couple of weeks within the white supremacist, white nationalist movement. When you saw in the wake of the Charlottesville, Virginia incident, Donald Trump talking about there's fine people on both sides, etc., were there indirect signals being sent to some of the groups that you used to be a part of?
I mean, he validated it. If I was the head of the group if I was the head of the group now, and that would happen like that, I mean, what a the president of the United States just validated us by saying we are good people and we are good. You know, what we stand for is good. The Friday night, those guys marched and were saying the Jews can't replace us. The whole group of them that are good people. Now, I do go on the fact that there are good people in all human beings, and we have the chance to find them, but we have to at least identify the problem, own the problem, and then we can fix it. I mean, he's saying that these guys are good people, and the night before they're all chanting, the Jews won't replace us. The Jews won't. So, yeah.
We've talked a little bit about how in 2008, when President Obama was elected, we know about the resurgence in a lot of these groups, and it's pretty easy to understand why. Half-black man elected president. You're going to see a resurgence in some of these white supremacist, white nationalist, neo-Nazi groups. However, throughout the Obama presidency, some of them sort of started to peter out a little bit. And then the Trump campaign happened, and the signals being sent to many of these groups. From your contacts, are these groups really experiencing a strong resurgence right now?
Oh, absolutely. This is going to be their new golden age, like just like the early 90s was. The early 90s was the golden age of the neo-Nazis is when the neo-Nazis broke away from the old regime of the Klan and all those, and we had that's when I was in it, and we had this great resurgence then, and then they went away. They went away until 2008. In 2008, the numbers grew instantly from election day, and to them, now we could say half black, half white. To them means 100% not white.
Of course.
Right? So, but you got to know that they went dormant for 8 years. They got a big number, a big spike, but everything they kept saying was going to happen didn't happen. Obama didn't come for their guns. He didn't come for their wives. He didn't come, all those things that they said he didn't do. So the group just kind of went more and more back to sleep, but they still kept their numbers and they still had these huge message boards. Well, when Trump comes along, he's using all these campaign slogans and speeches that are right up their alley. It starts to wake them up. They're like, oh yeah, we can get behind this,
And Frank, as a guy, given that you were a part of these groups historically, can you tell us really specifically which slogans or phrases are the ones that Trump uses that if you are part of a neo-Nazi, white supremacist, or white separatist group, you recognize?
The day he announces for his real candidacy, he says, they come over here, they're drug dealers, murderers, rapists, and I assume some of them are good people. Right there, he had all of them. That's the day he had every one of them. I mean, because that's the same thing they all, like I said, there's always racists who make exceptions. They always go, I hate all black people, except for John. I know John. He's cool. I work with him. All races have to make exceptions to live in this country. You just do. He, right there, just backed that whole thing up, because some Mexicans are okay, or some South Americans, they're okay, but most of them are rapists, drug dealing, gang, thug, criminals. And it's completely the opposite way, of course.
What's another example of the phrasing that Trump has used, which knowingly or not knowingly, I mean, I genuinely have no idea, not that it matters, is a sort of signal to white supremacists?
Oh, affirmative action. He talked about that probably about 3-4 weeks into real campaigning. He started talking about the affirmative action thing, which so many misinformed people, and I was one of them back then, about what this really is. And so we should all just be taken on our merit. We don't need a program to help them get, because obviously they didn't start to race later than we did in this thing. But anyway, so when he starts talking about affirmative action, is another big sign that he's on their side. And now, if you have the facts, and I know you do, about affirmative action, it isn't this, you have to take this guy over a white guy. It's that we have to get people in. The great case is the one in California with the fire department. They had made affirmative action come in. They had to start taking some black guys on to this force. And everyone was like, why should I make a guy who's less qualified be the guy who helped save my life in a fire? Now, granted, there was no lineage of fire department or firefighters that were black in that area. So now we're trying to change that. And they don't get that type of stuff. They think, and that's what I used to say back in the day, my recruiting days. Why? I didn't grow up special. I grew up hard as anyone. I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth. Why should anyone else get above me? Well, because, see, I can hide that in a job interview. A black dude can't hide that he's a black dude, So that was the facts that I knew and started to change my views. But I heard Donald saying the same things I used to say when I was not as informed. That is so up their alley.
Hey, Frank, I want to talk a little bit about how you were sort of pulled into this entire there's fine people and bad people on both sides thing. You were brought on to, remind me which Fox News program it was?
Oh, it was Martha. Just the Martha show.
Martha McCallum, right? I believe it is.
Yes, who I like her, actually. Yeah. And she's not,
Tremendous person, unbelievable person. But listen, here's the thing that happened.
They changed the host on the day of the interview. Go ahead.
You were brought onto this program, and you were told that you were being brought on. Why and to talk about what?
I was being brought on to help talk to people that are in the alt-right about why the alt-right could be bad and why the alt-right is different than just the conservative groups, right? So I'm like kind of touchy with this as it is, and so that's why I was brought on to explain why people are so joining the alt-right right now. That's what they told me.
And of course, you're positioned as someone who understands some aspects of the ideology that is in the alt-right through your history in the white supremacist movement, neo-Nazi movement, etc. You show up there, and what happens during the interview?
Okay, I got to set up one more part where they said, I told them, and this has been my thing I've been standing on all the last 2 weeks, is when I was a neo-Nazi, I would march in these rallies, and I said this on your show before, and people would throw bottles at us. Antifa, all these groups, they throw bottles at us. I never ducked the bottle and was like, whoa, I got to rethink my beliefs here. Like, I never did that. It doesn't work, right? So that was kind of my key thing. Like, we don't need more violence against these guys. It's not working. It's what they want. So that's what I was going on to say. Okay. They bring me on. They have a guy who was a former, Antifa member, and he still was actually part of the group, and he's a pretty cool guy, actually. So I didn't even know that until I get on the show. They text me and say, oh, here's another guest that's going to be on, and I look him up. Don't have time to really Google him, look him up, and they get him on, and he comes right at me because they kind of told him I was against him. Okay, so let's slow, just to make sure the audience knows what you're saying. As far as you knew until right before this appearance, you were going to be the only guest during this segment. And just before the interview takes place, you're told there's a former Antifa guy or current Antifa guy? Former. And he now tries to get them out of the group. Tries to get people to leave Antifa. Okay. Yep. And so then during the interview, you're put in this position to what? Criticize Antifa? Yeah. Yeah. You can see they keep trying to set up these questions to me to where it's like, that's what the question is formed. And so when I get into it with them, well, not with him, but with the Fox News person, I'm just like, well, no, they are unorganized. I kept saying, when you know that my comments kept starting with, well, he's correct on the other, he's making a good point. Like I kept saying stuff like that, about the Antifa guy. So I kept doing that until the end when I could just tell that they weren't going to let me talk about what they brought me on to talk about. And then at the end, if you see, that's where I start saying, these guys, they do property damage. The police and the FBI aren't looking at them for major violent crimes. They're still looking at the neo-Nazis and the right. And that's when they're like, all right, see you later, goodbye. So do you think the idea here was the underlying motive to try to, again, push this narrative that in the same way that we can say, well, Trump said there's good people on both sides, they were trying to create a situation of drawing an equivalency between the bad people on the neo-Nazi side and the bad people on the Antifa side? Is that sort of the false balance they were trying to create? Absolutely, because for 2 days up until that point, the story had started to turn for them that that the left had started to fight now. So now Fox is running with it, and and they were really running with it. And I thought that Martha would have been different. That's why I kind of agreed to the show, because I really don't want to go on Fox News that much unless they're going to let me talk about Fox News, and they're not going to let me do that. So, because Fox News has been a huge part of the campaign, which kept backing up the narrative that Trump was saying, which was helping the growth of these groups. And they know that. What happened after the fact? Did you have communication with producers? Oh yeah, and I have all the time. If we can block out the number, I'd love to send them over to you. Where she's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for you to get set up, and I am not that type of producer. You work at Fox News. You probably are that type of producer. Well, it's so funny because if the producer didn't, who set up the segment, right? Isn't it the producers that set it up? Yeah. And then she told me that she took off that day. Her and Martha both all of a sudden took off. I mean, I'm not like a big conspiracy guy here, but I feel a conspiracy here going on. I don't know. I just felt really weird, and they just both backed off, and then they had no contact until they tell me who my other guest is, and then it's some other producer, and I don't know who they are, and then the show starts, and it was brutally horrible, and the segment was supposed to be 5 minutes, and it was 3 because I wasn't saying anything anymore. I'm not going to feed into it to be on TV. I mean, really, I'd rather be coaching hockey. So, well, we will link to that segment, and that's an incredible situation. And as always, Frank Meeink, former neo-Nazi, of course, his autobiography, Recovering Skinhead. Always great to talk to you, Frank. Absolutely. Your audience loves me. I looked at some of the things last night. So many people, you should have him on more. You should listen to your audience sometimes, David. Hey, you're back because of that. All right, Frank, thanks very much. Thanks, guys. See ya.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So Whole Foods is known for being expensive, known as Whole Paycheck by some people. Whole Foods was purchased by Amazon in a major deal over the summer for $13.7 billion. And they officially closed the deal earlier this week on Monday. And there have been a bunch of articles written saying major price cuts at Whole Foods by up to 43%. Wow, that is huge, right? Well, they did cut prices by 43% on organic Fuji apples from $3.49 a pound to $1.99 a pound. You'll actually see, if you're watching with us, a list of some of the products where prices were cut. They range from 7% to 38 or even 43%, like the Fuji apples. Organic avocados are $1.99 rather than $2.79 now, down 29%. There's a big list here, right? So what's the strategy? Amazon, for a long time, has been a total market share business. They would reportedly buy electronics at full price from manufacturers to then sell them on Amazon for the exact same price or at a slight discount, all to take up market share. And it's pretty likely that that's going to be the same strategy at Whole Foods. You cut prices on some or many grocery items, you get people in the door, you continue to take market share from other grocery stores and grocery store chains. And the value for Amazon is not in eking out every last penny of revenue from eggs. It's the real estate, it's the brick and mortar stores, it's the urban footprint and the millennial and high income customers, and as well as the distribution network, right? Whole Foods can tie into Amazon Fresh. They can tie into Amazon Pantry and Amazon Prime. They can use Whole Food stores to test that Amazon Go system. They did that in Seattle. It's like a cashier-free grocery store where I believe it's through RFID technology. The store can tell what products you've put in your basket, and then you just walk out and it's automatically charged to your payment method on file. And the bigger market share can make it so that Whole Foods can simultaneously try to become known, not so much for high prices, but maybe for the best technology or whatever the case might be. That'll probably pick off some market share from people who otherwise would go to Trader Joe's or a local grocery store or somewhere else, as well as help to push forward the market share, rather the technological advancement plans of Amazon more broadly. And there are people who are really angry about this. I was reading articles about this online, Pat, and there are people who, based on their income, they don't care whether organic avocados cost $2.79 or $1.99. They don't want Whole Foods to be more crowded. They don't want less wealthy people showing up. People are genuinely angry that Whole Foods has reduced prices on some items.
Well, that certainly sounds a bit elitist to me. I mean, this whole thing with this purchase of Whole Foods by Amazon, I can see how it's polarizing, because on one hand, there's this concern of corporate consolidation, but on the other hand, you're interested in the innovation of things like Amazon Go being brought to Whole Foods.
Sure.
But with this specifically, I'm just a little bit indifferent. It just seems like a lot of the grocery store items are going on sale, and this is, something that already plays into their whole business structure as it is.
Well, I guess the idea is that these are not so much sales as Whole Foods is now permanently reducing the price of some staple items. And hey, that's great, right? I mean, they're reducing prices. That's perfectly fine. However, not only do you have concerns about the corporate consolidation, we've seen others like Walmart, for example, undercut prices in a way that really kills the local businesses. Grocery, by definition, is an area where margins are really, really slim. And this is a move that not only could grow market share for Amazon/Whole Foods because of the fact that they're lowering prices, it could also grow market share because it could drive competitors out of business, further fueling this cycle of consolidation. So I'm both very interested in this because these are, by and large, two pretty innovative companies, Amazon and Whole Foods. But at the same time, I have major concerns from an economic inequality and sort of monopoly standpoint about what the future holds here. Would you go to Whole Foods? Would you be more likely to go to Whole Foods because avocados dropped by 80 cents?
Oh, naturally, yeah. I think if the goods are cheaper, I'll be more inclined to go there. But also, if there's this small organic foods co-op in the area, I would be more inclined to visit there because it just seems like, something that affects my community a lot more. And
even if it's more expensive?
It's closer to home. Even if it's more expensive, yeah. I mean, that's something you have to weigh, right?
Wow. All right. Well, Pat will go to the local grocer.
It's the same reason why you don't go to Walmart, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I don't go to Walmart for a long list of reasons. Hey, this is kind of funny. So a while ago, I was contacted by film producer Hillary and Alexander Bach. And they told me, hey, we are producing a film. and it's an independent film, and we would like to use some audio of the David Pakman Show because during a certain point in the film, a character is going to be listening to the radio, and the idea is the David Pakman Show will be playing on the radio. And I thought, this is very cool. We're breaking into film. This is the start of an incredible ascent for the David Pakman Show.
We finally made it.
Making cameo appearances in media and blah, 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 blah. So, of course, I agreed to it, and we moved forward with this. And now I've received a preview of the scene, and I have to admit I'm a little bit bummed out because you can barely hear the David Pakman Show over the traffic noise that's part of the scene. And we're going to play it for you. It's only 25 seconds. It's during the opening credits of the film You and Me. And I don't even know if you're going to be able to tell that it's my voice. First, you're going to hear that segment where Donald Trump mocks the disabled reporter, Serge Kovaleski. And then it goes to a segment where I am commenting on that. It's a story we did a while ago, one story that did really well on our YouTube channel. You can barely hear it over the traffic noise, but I present to you the cinematographic debut of the David Pakman Show.
Nice reporter. Now report, guys. You gotta see this guy. I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
That reporter he is talking about is Serge Kovaleski, who now works for the New York Times. As you can see right there, he's up to the terrorist movement of his phone. The Times spokesman says they find it outrageous.
Yeah. So you might have missed it because it's almost inaudible. But when the character here, if you were just listening, was getting luggage out of her car, I am there commenting. And okay, well, this is it. I hope it was worth it to use the clip.
I'm not convinced that the camera guy or the guy operating the boom didn't just have the David Pakman Show podcast
playing in the background
in his pocket or something.
Listen, the movie seems absolutely tremendous, and I'm flattered that the clip was used. But what else can we say?
Is this what fame and success feels like?
If anybody else has any licensing inquiries, you can reach out to us through our website, davidpakman.com. We've got a voicemail number. That number is 219-2DAVID-P. You can call any time of day. And here is someone calling, expressing some motherly sentiment. Take a listen to this.
Mr. Pakman, I love you. I would be so proud to be your mother. You are awesome and wonderful, hardworking, and I so deeply appreciate you. And I just wanted to tell you that. Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, with peace and love. I don't think we've ever had a caller who expressed that they would want to be my mom. I think we did once have someone say they would love to be my grandmother.
Would you be proud to be this caller's son?
I mean, I don't know who it is, but she sounds to have a very respectable political beliefs.
Sounds lovely.
Sounds lovely, yeah. All right, on today's bonus show, Egypt is now promoting birth control to fight their problem of rapid population growth. We will also talk about Fox News getting pulled off the air in the UK. No, it's not a free speech infringement. It's just that nobody was watching Fox News in the UK, and it is now gone. And we will also talk about the FDA marking ecstasy, well, MDMA, the source chemical in ecstasy, as a breakthrough drug for possible PTSD treatment for former military service members. A lot happening on today's bonus show, davidpakman.com/membership to sign up, and soon bonus show access coming to Patreon at patreon.com/davidpakman show. Not yet, but soon, very soon, folks. That you can believe.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.